What is up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of It's Called Soccer, the American soccer show that covers everything happening in the world of soccer for America. Today, I'm your host, Jake Landau, joined as always by T-God, True Doctor of the Universe, Thomas Godden. How are you? We have a packed episode today. Let's go.
Dude,
Ready to talk?
I'm doing great. I'm ready to talk. This has been an awesome week of soccer. Lots happened, so ready to dive into it and see what we got in store for this episode.
This episode is all about a lot of things. Folarin Balogun probably is the one we have to lead off with. This guy just hit 20 goals today in Ligue 1 for Reims. He's on loan from Arsenal. He has committed his future to the U.S. men's national team. So what does that mean for our national team future? How do we line up? How does he change the team? We'll go through all of that, including talking a little bit about the Athletic article that covered how Folarin Balogun came to be committed to the U.S. and what that looked like. The U20s have started their World Cup journey. They beat Ecuador in a thrilling 1-0 victory. Jonathan Gomez, the dual national from Mexico, he can't play for Mexico in the U20 World Cup because they're not qualified. He gets the goal to give the U.S. the 1-0 victory against Ecuador in extra time, the 92nd minute. It all but essentially guarantees that we are through to the knockout rounds as the best third-place teams in these groups move on, and we have Fiji and Slovakia to go. So Ecuador is probably our most difficult game. We'll review that, talk about who has stock up, stock down, everything that happened with the U20 game. Then the Bundesliga is coming to a close. Pellegrino, Matarazzo, and John Brooks have secured safety in the Bundesliga. Matarazzo, who was fired from Stuttgart earlier in the season and hired at Hoffenheim to save them while they were in the relegation fight, will be safe. He will finish above Stuttgart as well, so we'll talk about that. Gio Reyna and Dortmund. Tom is repping the Dortmund kit today for a reason. Dortmund are in the driver's seat to win the Bundesliga for the first time in years, taking it and snatching it away from Bayern Munich as they lost their match against RB Leipzig at home to give Dortmund pole position going into next weekend, the final game of the Bundesliga season. Leeds Americans, they are going to be relegated, most likely. It's not official yet, but they will need a miracle on the final day of the Premier League match day to stay up in the Premier League. What will happen to Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, and Brendan Aronson next season? We'll talk through all of those and where they should go, what the permutations of the futures looks like. That's why we have the Doctor of the Universe here with us. And finally, the championship playoff final is set. Sadly, Zach Steffen and Lyndon Gooch have been eliminated, but we do have one American still in play. Ethan Horvath, everyone's favorite goalkeeper for U.S., is in the running to qualify or promote Luton against Coventry City. That will be next Saturday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Okay, what an episode we have here. Can't wait to dive into it. Tom, first, before we even talk about anything else, how good does it feel to know that Balogun is committed to the U.S.?
Dude, it's such a huge win for the U.S. We haven't had a true number 9 really rise above just a pool of basically similarly skilled players. There's some prospects like Pepe. They're sort of poised to maybe break out, but no one's really staked a claim to the striker spot since Josie Altidore? And even then, he was not really scoring in Europe or really doing a great job of staking a claim to it with his club play. This is the first time we've ever really seen a true out-and-out striker commit in their future to the national team and really give us a promising number 9 locked on target man for at least a decade. I guess he's not really a target man, he's more of a second striker, but we've got the 9 position at least sorted out. I feel a lot more confident. Do you feel a lot more confident with our 9th pool now that Balogun's on the team?
I do, absolutely. We've talked a lot about how the number 9 position has tons of depth. We have players that can maybe reach that potential to be a number 9 for the future of the U.S. And we have players in these positions like Christian Pulisic or Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Jedi Robinson. Like, all of them are performing at the highest level, but we just don't have that number 9 yet that was at that same level. And I think what Folarin Balogun gives to us is a number 9 at that level. I mean, it's funny. He commits to the U.S. He scores the goal this weekend. Then he puts out an Instagram post saying that he's the first American to score 20 goals in a top 5 league. Clint Dempsey was the closest with 17 for Fulham. So he seems to be enjoying it. He seems to be milking it, but in a positive way. And I do think Balogun does change the way that the U.S. lines up. I think it changes how we can evaluate our talent in the future, because really, like, the World Cup showed us that we were probably a number 9 and maybe one center back away from being true contenders, at least in the top 6 or 7 teams that could have made it further in the tournament. But the fact that we don't have to rely on Haji Wright or Daryl Dike to be healthy, or Josh Sargent to be hot and in form, to know that we have Balogun that can stretch the back line. He's really good at timing his runs, similar to like Jamie Vardy. So if we want to play on the counterattack and get in behind, we can do that. He's great in possession. He's a really tricky dribbler. So if we want to play in possession, and if he wants to drop in, false 9 or second striker, he can do that. He's not your target striker, right? Like, he's not going to get a ton of header goals. He has scored with his head, by the way, this season, but he's not like we're lining him up in the box and just swinging in crosses. That's not the best way to use him. So just the fact that we have someone of this caliber, he's 21. He's on loan right now in Liga, so he will be back with Arsenal. We'll see if they sell him or not next season. I think that'll be a big conversation, what happens to him in the summer transfer window, because he's going to be, probably evaluated at $30-40 million for a transfer, but he's going to be probably third in the depth chart behind Gabriel Jesus and Eddie Nketiah at Arsenal. So what do you think he needs to do this summer? He's going to be with us for the Gold Cup, which is really exciting, and the Nations League, which is incredibly exciting. We'll be able to see him for the first time with the U.S. team. What's the summer look like to you for Folarin Balogun?
It's going to be really interesting, because I think a lot of the conversation around what the summer looks like revolves around that transfer question. I think personally, I would love to see him play both the Nations League and the Gold Cup, but that depends. Does he get sold from Arsenal? Does he need a full preseason with a new club to sort of establish himself? I personally want him playing in Europe more than I want him playing every single possible minute for the US this summer. But we do need to see him with the team, see him integrated. So maybe we see him for the Nations League and the Gold Cup group stage or something like that. But yeah, it really is interesting to see what we do with him, how we line up. I think he slots in immediately as our number 9, particularly for Nations League. And it's a great 1-2 punch with him and Pepe, I think. It'll be really fun to sort of watch them work, watch them sort of probably go 60-30 in a couple of these games, and just see how they feed off each other's energy, push each other to be better. And how they link up with these with our talented wingers, who I think are going to come in and have great summers. So it'll be really fun to watch this team work and see how they play.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about how you think we'll line up, because Balogun gives us a number 9 that can play in the 4-3-3, but I think for me, what's most important is that we finally have a piece at the striker position that can interchange with the other forwards in the line. So if our front 3 is Christian Pulisic, Balogun, and either Timothy Weah or Gio Reyna, all 3 of them can play across the 3 positions in the front line. Whereas with Pepe, you really have a player has to be the number 9. He's going to be in that position. He can't really go out wide and create like that. So I think it gives us a lot of flexibility in how we line up, how we play, the style and tactic that we use. Now I'm considering this in a 4-3-3, but we'll talk about this a little later on. The U20 team used a bit different of a formation. And yeah, I'm wondering if this opens us up to either play with a 3 in the back system for the senior team, or potentially a 4-4-2, a formation that we saw, our national team beat Spain and have some of our best success in the 2010s. So what do you think this means to how we line up?
I think it does add some more tactical wrinkles. Like I've said, I'm really excited about Pepe's future. He's played so well for Groningen on a horrible team this year. I think a 2-striker look with Balogun and Pepe, particularly with their skill sets, they would complement each other. I think you could definitely see some looks where that would give some teams headaches, particularly with how good our wingbacks are. Dest and Robinson get bombing down the field with, Pepe and Balogun in the middle, sort of waiting to receive the balls and put them in the net. You've got a really fearsome team there. I think it just sort of is an incredibly flexible sort of roster that we can construct now. If you want to go 4-2-3-1, we've been pressing in a 4-2-4. You got Reyna, who can interchange with Balogun and maybe play some center forward. You have Pulisic and Weah, who can sort of interchange with both of those guys, and you have very fluid attacks. I like the flexibility it gives us. And yeah, the U20s have been showing us some 3-4-3, and maybe it opens up to that, especially in matches where Tyler Adams not available. So yeah, well, it'll be really interesting to see what Hudson and eventually our new manager end up doing with this squad.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about how this came to be, because it's well known that Balogun was in Florida with the U.S. team. He pulled out of the U21 squad for England when they were qualifying for the Euros. And there was an Athletic article this week that detailed how it came to be that Balogun pulled out of that camp, came to Florida, met with some representatives from the U.S. camp, was able to go back, talk to all of his family. His family was pushing him to commit to the U.S. And if you look across, like, obviously, this is going to come down to national pride, what you feel when you put on the shirt, what you feel when you touch the crest and you walk out onto the pitch. But at the same time, I think we have to say he'd be further down in the depth chart for both England and Nigeria. For Nigeria, it's just wrong time, wrong place for Balogun, because Osimhen is the leading scorer in Serie A. He's 24. He's going to be the number 9 for Nigeria for the next 10 years. Then you have Harry Kane, who's getting older, but then you have Rashford, Tony, all these other players for England. And you have the English coach, Gareth Southgate, that's kind of talking smack about how he doesn't want to see anyone that's not in the Premier League, specifically calling out Balogun in that speech when Balogun was meeting with U.S. representatives. And it seems like all of that pushed him to commit to the U.S. Tom, before you say your opinion on this, I do want to say one thing. The people that were part of this to get Balogun to commit to the U.S. were people within the U.S. Soccer Federation, because we don't have a manager. Obviously, Anthony Hudson did some work to do this, but one name that consistently came up was Michael Kammerman, who is the press officer for the U.S. men's national team. He got a lot of shtick for how Greg Berhalter handled his press conferences while he was coach. So I just want to say, calling out to Michael Kammerman, everyone who's hating on Kammerman, got to give him some credit where it's due for getting Balogun to commit to the U.S. I'm not saying it was him all alone, but he was a big part of the story of all the little steps that needed to happen to get Balogun to commit.
I think also fair to shout out JT Batson too, who has just come into his role at U.S. Soccer and just run with it and done such a great job. And he seems to have been very active in all of this. And I'm really a fan of all the stuff that JT Batson has done to sort of improve the federation over the last few months. So shout out to JT Batson too for his role in this. I do think that, I hate to bring it back to this, you have to give some credit to Berhalter too. I know that Berhalter wasn't super involved in this recruitment process, but the culture that he built, the dual nat recruiting culture, the culture of young players who like playing together, is an attractive culture for a player like Balogun, who can come in and meet with a Weston McKennie and a Yunus Musa and say, okay, yeah, this is a group of guys that I want to play with going forward. So there's credit to go around for USSF, but there's a lot of people who did a great job to make this happen.
For sure. And the story also articulates some dinners that were had with Agent Matt Turner and Agent Yunus Musa to get him over here while he was in Florida. He didn't train with the team, but he was training where the team was training, basically, parallel to them. And he met with representatives. He had dinner with his Arsenal teammate, Matt Turner, and one of his good friends from the Arsenal Academy days, Yunus Musa. So thank you to everyone that got Balogun here. That is a huge win for the U.S. And like you said, the training camp and the camp culture within this team, I think it has to be said that Balogun is not the first player to commit to this team after coming and meeting with the team and seeing what the culture was like. We've seen Yunus Musa, Serginho Dest, Ricardo Pepi, Jesus Ferreira even was eligible for Colombia. So Balogun is one of many players that have seen the culture that is being built. I mean, we talk about all these players. Pulisic is the oldest one, and he's 24 years old. The World Cup's in 3 years. Gio Reyna's 20 still. Yunus Musa's 20. Like, all these players are... We talk about this all the time. You've heard us talk about it in previous episodes as well, but it just needs to continue to be said just how young this team is, how much quality there is. And Balogun is just that, I think, one last piece to really make us contenders in the international stage.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we're going to keep getting better over time. These young players are going to keep to grow and develop, and the future's bright. We say that a lot, but the future's just so bright, and Balogun is sort of just another piece of that puzzle.
Right. Okay. Anything else to say about Balogun?
Not really. Excited for Nations League.
Cool. And if you would like to feel the joy of how you felt when Folarin Balogun broke the news that he was committing to the U.S., You can also look into joining the It's Called Soccer Patreon, where you can get exclusive interviews with players and coaches, and you can feel the inner joy and inner wonders of what it feels like to support independent creators like ourselves covering soccer. So check that out. It's patreon.com/itscalledsoccer. For, I think, $3 a month, you can support us and feel the joy that you felt when Folarin Balogun committed to the U.S. All right, Tom, let's talk a little bit about the U20 squad that took on Ecuador. That was probably our most difficult group stage match. Ecuador came in third place in the last U20 World Cup. They have one of the best prospects from South America on their team, Paez, as well, who balled out. He almost had an incredible dribble and run in on goal against the U.S., but fortunately he just took one last poor touch in the box. So talk to me about what you saw from this game. You mentioned the 3-4-3. Where did that come from?
That was a wild formation. I kind of expected a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, as we've sort of seen a lot from this U20 team. I think the false nine wasn't super unlikely that they threw out there, but yeah, they threw out a really weird formation where the players who were in there, I think, were who we thought would play, but the positions they were playing in were just a little bit wild. Do we want to go through the full formation and who played where?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so at goalkeeper we had Gaga Slonina, our
obvious choice.
Yeah, obvious choice in the Chelsea Academy, hailed as the next big thing at Chelsea, a goalkeeper. Had a great game. Across the back, we had a 3-back line of Josh Winder at left center back. We had Brandon Craig of the Philadelphia Union Academy at true center back, and then on right center back we had Justin Che, formerly of Hoffenheim, coming back to FC Dallas. Our wing backs sort of joined the midfield too. We had Caleb Wiley of Atlanta United on the left wing back. We had Obed Vargas next to him from Seattle. Then there was who was next to him? Jack McGlynn from Philadelphia Union was the other center midfielder, and then Jonathan Gomez played out of position as the right back, coming from Real Sociedad. And then across the front, we ran Diego Luna as a false nine, and then Owen Wolf as our left wing, and Quinn Sullivan was the right wing. It was a very funky formation. That front three was very fluid, a lot of dropping into the midfield, combining, but what did you think of it when you saw it?
I thought, if this was a team that played together all the time, wonderful. Like, great use of players, great use of the talents and skill sets that you have. I was a little worried about seeing Jogo on the right. He's usually a left back. He's very left-footed as well. Caleb Wiley was an interesting point to me because he's either, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but he's either a left back that plays very high up the pitch or he plays left wing. He's not necessarily a part of a three in the back system where he plays that wide full back. So for me, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense where you put all these players, but it worried me a little bit that this is a national team. This is a group of players that rarely play in this formation. I mean, the Philadelphia Union play a 4-4-2 diamond, and you had Jack McGlynn in the middle, like playing almost a holding midfielder next to Obed Vargas.
And Vargas plays a double pivot, a 4-2-3-1 as a 6.
Like, I thought that it was an amazing show of quality, and I also thought that it was really genius from Mikey Varas of how he implemented like stylistic choices into how we played so that players could still feel confident in the way that they played for their clubs. And so what I mean by that is, like, we still played a counter-pressing game. So while we might have not been in a 4-4-2 diamond, Jack McGlynn still knew his triggers to go press, when to counter-press, when to hold the ball up. And, like, yeah, it didn't need to be technical. We didn't need to find triangles and do crazy stuff. Like, we did play a wild formation, but I thought we played simply. I thought we played beautifully at times. Our defense was a little more open than I would have hoped for, but we'll talk about some stock up, stock down, and maybe why that was. But yeah, at the beginning of the game, I would say I was a little bit worried that it would take away from the qualities that we know to be true for our players. But I think by the end of the game, I was convinced that we still used everything that we know to be true about our style and our abilities and our technical quality, and just fit that into a different mold of the formation on the field.
I agree, and I think that it was sort of done in a way that brought out the best of a lot of players. So, Brandon Craig, I think particularly was, put in a position where he could just shine. His best attribute is his ball playing, and he just was breaking lines left and right, and it just sort of opened up the entire game. So Obed Vargas was another one who we just sort of seemed to thrive in the role they were giving him. And I think Caleb Wiley, for all the talk of left back, left wing, I think a left wing back is probably his best position. So, yeah, I think that there was just a couple of players who were just put in a position to succeed and just, we're missing a few key guys. You sort of play around that right now and sort of put guys where you can to make them shine as best as possible. I think we'll talk about stock down too. There's some players who were in poor positions who I think had bad games, but for the most part, it really allowed players to shine.
Yeah, and I think something that we did well, just to point it out tactically, is we played in really tight triangles, like near the sidelines, and as soon as we found a little bit of space to play a longer pass, we had a lot of space open to the left or right wings, where Quinn Sullivan, right?
Yeah.
Is on the right.
Yeah.
And then Wolf was on the left. Like anytime that we played a quick triangle and found some space on the right side, someone would be able to play a long ball to Wolf on the left and open up that space. I thought we played well in transition. There were moments where, it could have been better. And to me, all that is that these are really young players. Like I'm not expecting everything to be perfect. It was nice to see a pitch that we could pass on. After watching the CONCACAF U20 championships, it's just nice to see them on a true pitch where they can really show their qualities. So I was very happy with that. I think, for me, some of the winners were Obed Vargas, really impressed me, and Caleb Wiley. No matter where he played on the pitch, he was really great. Brandon Craig, amazing. Jonathan Gomez, despite the goal, I thought had a really good game in the attacking phase, especially, and just supporting the attack with his passing. He did this a few times where Ecuador is pressing us really high up the pitch. We were in our defensive third, and Jonathan Gomez kind of played like he was going to play a pass and then shifted his body weight and dribbled past an oncoming attacker. And it just opened up the field for us. And he did that a few times where it was like, playing out of a press with passing only is great and it looks wonderful, but it's also dangerous.
Yeah.
The fact that we could have, wide backs that can beat a man on a dribble and open up space that way, I thought it really helped us. Just kind of, it did feel like the U.S. had control of that game the entire time. I think if we go stock down, Joshua Winder was probably the player that sticks out the most for me.
I had Owen Wolf too.
Yeah, Wolf had some balls that just kind of wasted an attack, but what did you see?
I just forgot about it on the field. He just sort of seemed very pedestrian. It seemed like every time he received the ball, he was looking to play a back pass or just wasn't doing a lot with it. That changed. He gets an assist at the end of the game, but I just felt like he was kind of wasteful and just not really making a huge impact whenever he got on the ball.
Yeah. What about Winder for you? Because he's one of the players that comes in with kind of the highest value. I mean, he's from USL, but he's going to be sold for millions of dollars to Benfica soon.
Yeah.
He comes in with, one of the most impressive resumes in terms of minutes played for a senior team. What stuck out to you about him?
It just didn't seem athletic enough, almost. It's weird to say, but he just sort of seemed to be beat all the time. It kind of looked like a mini John Brooks out there, but he wasn't doing any of the fun passing that you get with a John Brooks. It just sort of seemed like every single time Ecuador found some joy, it was by beating him and sort of getting down that right flank. And, it might be he was played a little wider than he's used to, but it didn't seem up for it.
Yeah, I agree. It was kind of like simple things that I saw where if you don't follow 1-2 and you let your player go on and get into the box, that's kind of a cardinal sin for a center back where I don't think it was like laziness. Maybe he's tired from having a lot of minutes in the USL. But really, like, you're right. That's where a lot of Ecuador's attacks came through. And Slonina had a good game. Other center backs had a good game. Thankfully, Ecuador didn't score. And even if it had stayed 0-0, the U.S. put themselves in a great position to qualify for the knockout rounds. But with this win, I mean, we have Fiji on Tuesday at 2 p.m. and then Slovakia, I think, on Friday next week at 2 p.m. as well. I mean, pretty much guaranteed to go through to the knockout rounds. After seeing this team in action now, have your expectations changed at all?
I think I want to see them with Cade Cowell and Kevin Paredes and Rokas Puksas before I really judge them. I'm impressed with how well they did, given that I think 3 of their best players were not playing. So it'll be really interesting to see how they do with that. I also think, we need to have a conversation about the 9 and the false 9 and how that's going to affect them, because Diego Luna had an okay game, but it's probably one of the more controversial games a person played on the field.
Why do you say that?
I mean, he was making stuff happen. Yeah, he was making stuff happen. He was, just taking guys on left and right on the dribble. But he would beat 3 guys on pretty regularly, and then the 4th one would take it off him. It just sort of seemed he would beat a guy, turn the ball over repeatedly. It just seems that everything was just one too many touches, one too many guys tried to be taken on, not really connecting that final ball. There's clearly talent there, but it felt a little wasteful. It felt like a lot of attacks died.
Definitely a game where you look at that player and you're like, wow, that potential, that quality, that ceiling is insane.
Mm-hmm.
He also, with his dribbling, with his beating of defenders, you genuinely do say, wow, when he does something like that. I mean, he had like a croqueta that beat 2 players on the dribble, got him into a box, and then, you're right, he just missed that final pass or got the ball taken off of him.
Yeah.
Slow-mo replays look amazing. You're like, damn, that guy's awesome. But at the same time, you need that final ball. If you're playing in that false 9, if you're playing in the 10 position, your role is to distribute. Your role is to create. So make sure that you're doing that. But yeah, I thought he showed tons of quality, but just
he didn't
quite there.
I think it would have been a different game for him if Wiley finishes. He had a really nice play where he slipped the ball into Wiley, and I think, in Atlanta he finishes that ball. But he just didn't quite get around it, didn't quite get a good shot off. One too many touches, I think. And that would have, I think, changed the evaluation a little bit, which is a little bit unfair to Luna. But at the same time, there's just a lot of wasteful stuff that didn't come off, and it hurt the attack. And I thought we played a little bit better going forward when Yappy came in.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that Cowell is in contention to play in that position? Because really, Darren Yappy is the only number 9. We talked about this on the last episode.
Yeah.
Diego Luna is playing in that position in this first game. Yappy came in to play that number 9, although he kind of played out wide a little bit where Wolf was. Do you think Cowell is the answer to that?
Cowell is an interesting one. I feel like I personally evaluate him more as a true number 9, but it seems like everyone else is evaluating him more as a left winger. So he's got the athleticism to play that number 9, but I don't know really where we see him slotting in when he comes in. I personally would like to see him with the 9. I thought that during the CONCACAF qualifying too, that he seemed better when he was in central instead of trying to play out wide. So it'll be really interesting to see where Veras plays them, especially with Paredes coming in too, who I think is our best left winger. So yeah, I don't know what we're gonna see out of it. Plus, is Cal suspended one more game?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I thought he was.
Yeah, we have Paredes that still needs to play his last game for Wolfsburg.
Yep.
We have Puchas, who has a cup final in a few days and will join the team until the 3rd game, at least in the group stage. But the fact that we know pretty sure that we're going to be in the knockout rounds kind of helps everyone to come together. Whatever that looks like, if we win the group or just qualify, we'll be there.
We got to hammer Fiji, though. Slovakia beat them by 4. You got to win that game, and you got to do it by multiple goals. I think that's sort of the next litmus test for this team is they look beautiful in possession. The defense is solid. Can we find the back of the net? That is, I think, the biggest question we're going to be asking all tournament.
But Ecuador is quite a good team.
Yes.
Ecuador is probably going to be our most difficult test. We were missing 3 of our best players. We played players out of position. We played a crazy formation, and we still won that game 1-0. So we'll see what happens for the rest of the tournament. Make sure you're following along with that. If you do, again, want to see any exclusive interviews with some of these players, I am reaching out to the press officer throughout this tournament, so you can see them potentially on the Patreon or as an extension of these podcasts as we go into the next few weeks. Tom, if we get Caleb Wiley, I'll make sure you're included in that one to come in and join for the Atlanta fandom.
Be fun.
Talking about, you mentioned that one of our players, Joshua Winder, looked like a John Brooks out there. Now, John Brooks has had somewhat of a resurgence himself. Let's talk a little bit about the Bundesliga and the close to the season, because Pellegrino Matarazzo, an American from New Jersey, America, is the coach of Hoffenheim right now. John Brooks was brought in from Benfica, actually halfway through the season in the January transfer window. He has been just inserted right into the center back position for Hoffenheim, has come in, and Hoffenheim are out of relegation candidacy. They are safe from relegation this season. So before we talk about the top of the table and Gio and Dortmund and what all that looks like, talk to us a little bit about John Brooks and Pellegrino Matarazzo and some of the Americans in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, so they've clawed their way back. Brooks came in and immediately lost like 6 games in a row before being dropped from the starting 11 for a few matches, but since has righted the ship, and they're playing really solid football right now. They've really managed to claw their way up the table. They're playing great defense. They're winning games by multiple goals. I think they're going to finish above Stuttgart, which is where Matarazzo was fired from, so it's been a great end of the season for Hoffenheim. Brooks has looked like one of their better players too, so he's starting to push again for a U.S. call-up over the summer. Is he on your Nations League roster list right now?
I mean, yeah. Like, why wouldn't he be?
Yeah. Especially with Tim Ream gone.
I agree, yeah. I mean, Tim Ream is still going to be recovering from his arm injury. We have a player in the Bundesliga that's getting tons of minutes at the center back position. We know his quality. He's 30 years old. Like, that's not that old for a center back.
Yeah.
Despite what happened with Greg Berhalter, I still think he has some good relationships with the team, and anyone can come in and, say they're sorry, have one-on-one conversations and rebuild those relationships. There is no reason why, if John Brooks isn't with the team, there's no reason why he can't at least still be in contention for the national team after getting this type of playing time. And yeah, like you said, so Stuttgart, everyone has played 33 games. There's 34 in the season, so they have 1 game left. Stuttgart is currently in 15th position, tied with Bochum for that last relegation playoff spot on 32 points. Hoffenheim is in 13th position with 35, with a much better goal differential. So even if Stuttgart wins their next game and Hoffenheim loses, likely will be the case that Hoffenheim finishes above Stuttgart. So I don't know if you're kind of prepared to talk about Pellegrino Matarazzo, but I did watch the Hoffenheim game against Union Berlin, and it was my first time really paying attention to how Matarazzo plays or tries to set up his team. And this is one game, so if we want to do, further breakdown, I can definitely watch some more footage, but I thought they did a really good job of, like you said, playing solid defense, making sure that was the foundation of the team, trying to minimize the chances from Union Berlin. But at the same time in attack, I thought it was really interesting how they would kind of pull defenders out of position. So the number 9 would drop really deep, pull a defender, center back out of position, and then their wide player would run into that channel and they would play these long balls. Like, they weren't hopeful. They weren't trying to get in behind the line. They were just trying to play balls that were kind of like in dangerous areas where their players had good chances to get on to the end of it. Mm-hmm. And that's how they got a lot of their chances. They also counter-pressed really well. That's how they scored their second goal. So I was really impressed with how Hoffenheim played, and just like, if you're going to have average personnel, somewhat, a team that's going to finish between 7th and 12th in the Bundesliga, that might be the way to go. Just try and get as many clean sheets as you can, play the balls into dangerous channels, drop in, take center backs out of position, defenders out of position. So, I mean, I know we might be at the point where we're talking about U.S. manager soon, potentially Jesse Marsch or someone else, but Matarazzo, if he does want the job, I could see that working really well for the U.S. and kind of aligning with the players that we have.
Has he always run a back 3? I don't know if you've watched him much at Stuttgart before.
I don't know enough about his history to say yes or no.
Because I'm curious to see how the U.S. would do in a back 3. I think that maybe doesn't get enough of our midfield players on the field, but it would be interesting to see what a back 3 specific coach could install with time and, the player pool that we have. So Matarazzo is one of those names who's always sort of been on the fringe of that manager conversation, who I think deserves a little bit more of a look. He's been in the Bundesliga for years now. He took Stuttgart up and has basically been there for years. So yeah, I had been really fun to watch, that rise to prominence for him, essentially. I think at some point he deserves a look.
For sure. Okay, at the top of the table, Tom, Bayern Munich fumble the ball. Wrong football, but still. Thomas Tuchel's team and in Munich have lost at home 3-1 to RB Leipzig, essentially giving Dortmund the chance to take over pole position. Today, Dortmund did win 3-0. They are now in one win away from grabbing the title in the last few years from Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga. Gio Reyna did see a few minutes at the very, very end of the match. I thought, because they were playing Augsburg. Augsburg got a red card in the first half. I thought the game was going to call for a creative player that could break down a low block. That's Gio Reyna. But alas, he only saw the last few minutes. But who am I? Because Dortmund still wins the game 3-0. Tom, what will it mean for Dortmund to beat Bayern Munich, the giants of German football?
I feel like it means a lot specifically to Dortmund. I feel like it would mean a lot to, the whole Bundesliga if they were to dethrone Bayern. But specifically Dortmund, after years and years and years of all of their best players being bought by Bayern Munich, to finally retain enough of a squad that can go in and win the title, it's got to be just the best feeling in the world for that squad, specifically for those fans. It's going to mean a lot when Bayern finally gets dethroned. And I think Dortmund, after years of sort of playing second fiddle, watching their players leave, is going to, have just a giant weight lifted off their shoulders as a result of this. But they have blown this in the past, so let's not start popping the champagne yet. They've
never been this close either. I think over the last decade, they've come within 2 points as their closest. Even if they lose and Bayern win, I think they will lose the title by 1 point. So
1 point.
No matter what happens, they'll be the closest that they have been. But you're right. They are eternal bottlers, a team that is renowned for how to mess up. And if you are thinking that Manchester City is making the Premier League a farmers league, a team that, or a league where only one team wins, no other team has won the Bundesliga since 2011, since the 2011 season. And that was Dortmund.
Yeah.
It's insane the dominance that Bayern has had in German football. And you're right, they just buy whatever player they want from other German teams. That consolidates all the power and the talent at the top at Bayern Munich. So, man, what a turnaround this could be, especially after firing Julian Nagelsmann, one of the best young coaches, who was still in all three competitions. He was in the Champions League. He was in the DFB Pokal. He had just lost the first place position in the Bundesliga for the first time that season, and he was fired. And now look at them, out of the Champions League, out of the DFB Pokal, in position to lose the Bundesliga. I mean, damn, that's insane, right?
And nuts. I don't understand why you would ever make that decision. That's a crazy overreaction to dropping out of pole position, especially Nagelsmann's a great manager, and I think that he would have probably righted the ship and gotten them back in position. It's kind of crazy how the season's played out. I wouldn't have expected this to happen in the season after Haaland leaves Dortmund. I think it was like the worst season for this to be happening for Dortmund, and they've just sort of found a squad that just got red hot and stayed healthy and just ran with them. It kind of sucks as US fans because Gio is not one of those players who has been getting regular minutes, but you almost can't argue with that decision because of how well the players are playing ahead of him. I think he's probably a better player than some of them too, but what are you going to do? They've won like 15 matches over the last 16 or something insane like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably put Gio Reyna ahead of Julian Brandt. I'd put him ahead of Njima.
Adeyemi.
Only Daniel Malin, yeah.
Yeah.
At the same time, I mean, you mentioned Haaland, but they've kind of re-upped on talent. Moukoko is there. Adeyemi, who was at RB Salzburg in the Champions League, is there. So they just keep finding this young core of talent that every year just churns and churns and churns. And finally, you're right, they have a squad that's challenging. Probably wasn't going to be the season that you think it's going to be, but yeah, that top four from Germany is going to be fun to watch in that last match day. You have the Dortmund-Munich storyline. Leipzig has kind of solidified their place in third position, but then you have Union Berlin, who have been serial overperformers this season. They are tied on points with Freiburg. Bayer Leverkusen is within that Europa Conference League position, but Wolfsburg, Frankfurt are still in contention for that. So it's going to be a good final match day in the Bundesliga. Tom, let's turn our sights to England in the Premier League. That final match day will also be interesting for other reasons. Looking at the bottom of the table, we have Leeds, Leicester, or Everton going down. Maybe two of them. Maybe.
I think it is guaranteed to be two of them at this point.
Leeds look likely to be one of those teams after their loss today. They have a final match day against Spurs, and as bad as Spurs has been, that's still not a team that I really want to be playing on the final match day when I need a victory, especially when you consider that this is probably going to be Harry Kane's last game in a Spurs shirt. He's going to be wanting to do some stuff and go out in a blaze of glory. So if they do go down, if they are going to the championship, we have three Americans that are tied to Leeds. Now, Weston McKennie is on loan from Juventus. He will likely go back to Juve over the summer and potentially reevaluate if he's going to stay at Juve or be sold. We have Brendan Aronson and Tyler Adams that are Leeds players. Brendan Aronson, I could see him staying in the championship with Leeds, kind of bulking up, being more physical, getting a season in the championship, and then moving somewhere else if they don't get promoted right away. Tyler Adams, though, I think he's going to be a hot commodity on the transfer market, especially when you think about all of the center midfielders that could potentially move from their teams. I'm thinking about Declan Rice. I'm thinking about Caicedo, McAllister from Brighton. We also might talk about McKennie to Brighton as a possible landing spot for him. But yeah, I think if they go down, Tyler Adams is too good to be in the championship. If West Ham sells Declan Rice, they're going to want to re-up quickly, and Tyler Adams might be the perfect player to go into that position. But where do you think these three players for Leeds are going to end up?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. I think that I'd be disappointed if Adams doesn't end up on a Champions League level team. It's somewhere in the world. It might be he might end up going back to Germany, might end up in Italy somewhere, but I think it probably will be a top level Premier League team that scoops him up quickly. He's just so talented. It would be a shame if he doesn't sort of make an upgrade from Leeds. McKennie is a little bit different. I would like to see him possibly stay in the Premier League. Brighton would be a good landing spot. They've played really well the last few years. They've been contenders almost. So yeah, let's see.
Went for Europe today.
Yeah, let's see McKennie there. I would not mind seeing that at all. So I think that those two are sort of the likeliest to get a move. I don't think Leeds can recoup what they paid for Brendan Aronson at this point. I also think he probably needs a year in the championship to sort of help him with his game. I think a year in a physical league where he's going to get bullied a lot is going to do him a world of good in helping him sort of take that next step to being a really good attacking player. So yeah, I think that's sort of my ideal landing spot for the three is seeing Adams make a huge upgrade, McKennie stay in the Premier League, and Brendan Aronson go down and stay with Leeds.
I could see Aronson kind of having the same projected like development as a Jack Harrison, someone that went down with Leeds, played in the championship for a few years, came back up. It just feels like there's a lot to learn. There's a lot that he can add to his game. So you're right. I think, yeah, Tyler Adams is going to be a replacement for one of the center midfielders that leaves this season. Brendan Aronson might do a world of good to have him in the championship. I think Brighton would be a wonderful spot to see McKennie. And if I'm being honest, Brighton might be a good landing spot for a few different Americans, whether it's Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, maybe Yunus Musa is going to be on the move again. Although with their win against Real Madrid, it looks like they have secured safety in La Liga this season. So we'll see what happens to Yunus Musa. I want to shout out to Chambers WI from the Discord. I want to read you something that he said and get your thoughts on it. He said, Leeds to me is an example as to why not to panic when things aren't going great. Not saying that Jesse Marsch shouldn't have been fired, but Leeds clearly didn't have a plan on what to do after firing Jesse. They were not in the same situation that Southampton, Leicester, Everton, or Wolves were with their manager changing this year. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think with time now, having the Monday morning quarterback and looking back at Leeds' season, it doesn't seem to me that Jesse Marsch was the issue, and if they had just kept him, they were kind of on a better trajectory to win some more points.
Someone posted the numbers in somewhere on Twitter or somewhere that I was looking today, and Marsh had them the closest playing to their expected goals, expected points, any of the managers they've had this season. Or I guess the expected points per game was the stat. It was like minus 0.16 expected points per game to the actual points they were getting. I feel like they were a few weeks from turning it around when he was fired, and he just, I've said this before, you have him, you spend 40 million plus, you go grab McKennie, you go grab Wober, and then fire him the next week. I don't understand that move. It feels like maybe a month more of letting those players cook would have been great for that squad and see if they could have righted the ship. They were definitely more fun to watch under Marsh than some of these other managers have been. So I don't know. Yeah.
Bamford wasn't underperforming his expected goals by like 6 or 7 this season, and a lot of that for Jesse Marsh.
Or even if they'd had a pedestrian keeper, even not legitimately one of the 3 worst keepers in the Premier League in Meslier. Like they have had a bad keeper and an underperforming striker, and that has really been the issue more than almost anything else. I don't really even think it's much on the manager. I think Tyler Adams goes down around the same time you fire Marsh, and your goalkeeper and striker issues just become that much more obvious, and the recipe is there for just this team to look horrible.
Yep, and it is a disaster now. I can tell you that. It is not fun watching Leeds right now in the Premier League.
Well, I watched the second half this morning, and I was kind of regretting my decision to get up and watch. It was rough.
Yeah. All right, staying in England, Tom, the Championship playoff final. We did see 2 Americans leave the competition with Zach Steffen at Middlesbrough. He'll be back to Man City, but I doubt that he will continue on a contract there. Likely he'll be loaned or transferred again. But Lyndon Gooch, Sunderland captain, loses to Ethan Horvath and Luton. A stunner. Luton and Coventry are 2 teams that you would have rarely thought of as contenders to be promoted this season. 2 of the smallest stadiums that will come into the Premier League for either one that wins this playoff final. And for me, the Championship final is one of my favorite games of the season every year. It's one that I watch no matter who's playing in it. But the fact that so many have had Ethan Horvath or Americans in general over the last few seasons, it's made it that much more fun to watch. Talk to me a little bit about the Championship final, Luton versus Coventry. And I think Ethan Horvath's probably the player that's closest to staying with his club if they went up. And staying with them in the Premier League.
I don't know. I'm interested to get your take on Ethan Horvath because I've seen some of his games and he looks pretty good. But when I see Luton fans discussing him online, they don't really seem like they're too enthused with keeping him. And I think they want to upgrade if they make the Premier League. Nottingham Forest fans don't want him back. They want him to go somewhere else. I'm not sure what to make of his career trajectory. It sort of seems like he's rated as this sort of pogo stick, like I guess, club, that sort of player that's just going to promote a bunch of teams, but then never really be the keeper to, get them in the Premier League and keep them in the Premier League. It just doesn't seem like he's a Premier League level keeper. Is that a fair assessment of him?
I mean, probably. Even though I might not agree with that assessment, the fact that scouts and coaches and fan bases around the world do think that, I'm probably going to go with the groupthink on that one. At the same time, though, how can you argue with success and results? Especially at the keeper position. Horvath has been, when he's gotten playing time, his teams have won. Mm-hmm. And he is not, he's not a keeper that makes a ton of mistakes. But, I mean, if I look at Nottingham Forest and their keeper group, it's Keylor Navas. Horvath is not better than Keylor Navas. Dean Henderson. Ethan Horvath is not better than Dean Henderson. And Wayne Hennessy, the Wales goalkeeper, probably not better than Wayne Hennessy. Yeah. So do you want to go back to Nottingham Forest where you're...
Well, all those guys are on loan, I think, pretty much. Nottingham Forest bought a bunch of people on loan. There's not a lot of those guys returning this year. Yeah.
I mean, so Ethan Horvath has had 4 errors that have led to goal this season in the Championship. He's conceded 37 goals on 33.3 expected goals on target face. So pretty average numbers, but at the same time, like not horrible either. I think if you're a Premier League club, you're probably going to look at those 4 errors that led to goals and think, you know what, I'm probably a relegation candidate if I'm looking at Ethan Horvath, a goalkeeper, and I do not want a keeper that's going to have errors that lead to goals, because those 4 goals may end up leading me to lose hundreds of millions of dollars or pounds to be allocated again.
Well, and if it's specifically Nottingham Forest, if it took Keylor Navas to keep you up, then looking at Ethan Horvath is not really what I'm going to be doing, because there's some serious squad upgrades that are needed, and Horvath is not going to be an upgrade at the goalkeeper position.
Yeah, I do think he could easily make his way being signed permanently to a championship club, one that's potentially Sunderland, or one that's competing for promotion in the next few seasons. I also think if he just takes a step back and looks across the other top 5 leagues, there's probably tons of opportunities in France or in Germany potentially. We've seen how accommodating German football has been to Americans. Even think about Zach Steffen and his loan at first that kind of got him back on track. So I think there's teams out there, there's clubs out there that Ethan Horvath can go to and kind of build he doesn't need to build back anything, because he's promoted. Well, if Luton get promoted, he'll have 2 clubs.
Well, and he was the backup last year at Forest for most of the season.
Yes, but he was playing
in the final. Yes.
Yep. And he has Champions League experience. Like he was the starting keeper for a Champions League club before they signed. I forgot.
It was Mignolet.
Yeah. Mignolet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he has quality. He can go somewhere where he's going to play. It probably won't be in the Premier League, but that's up to him on what else to do next season.
It'll be really interesting to watch. I hope that he gets promoted. Luton Town is such a great story too that I really just want to see them get to the Premier League. They have the first club to drop all the way down to the National League and possibly come back and get promoted all the way to the Premier League, and the first player to stick with the club to go all the way down to the National League and come back up. So that's just an awesome story to hopefully see them go through. I'm going to be rooting for them for sure, not just because of Luton Town or because of Ethan Horvath, but because this is just such a Cinderella story, like one of the most unlikely things to happen in English soccer in years.
So when I was working in England, I had an office job. My coworker, shout out to Ed Asafu Ajay, look him up. He came up through the Luton Academy, played for Luton, won the League Cup in League Two, and was the MVP at Wembley for Luton. But now he works an office job just like all of us. And he was a wonderful guy. Shout out to you, Ed. You're probably not watching because you're English and you don't care about American football. But just thought I'd share that they're everywhere. Ed Asafu Ajay, MVP of life, MVP of Luton. So I'm going to be rooting for my guy Ed and for my guy Ethan in that championship final. It's next Saturday at 11:30 p.m. or 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. Right, Tom, what else do you have to say? Anything else that happened in American soccer this week?
I don't think so. I think we've pretty much covered it. Trying to think of anything notable in the other top leagues. Maybe Mark McKenzie is worth a quick mention. I don't know if you've been following. Yeah, he's 4 goals in 4 games or something like that to end the season. Is he earning a summer look again for the U.S.?
Yeah, again, why not? Why wouldn't you look at these players?
Yeah.
Mark McKenzie also was he was a top prospect coming through the Philadelphia Union Academy, sold to a good level club in Europe. He's competing. At times he's captained his club in Belgium as well. Genk is one of the best clubs there in that league. I don't think they're going to win this season with their results. They kind of have this weird playoff schedule where the top 4 from the season then go into a round robin tournament. I don't think they're going to win that. But yeah, he's been scoring like a monster. He's a center back. But yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't you bring him back in? Still young. Center backs develop later on. I expect that he'll kind of take the trajectory as, CCV. Very similar profile as well. Just big and demanding in that back line. So yeah, why not? Why not bring him in?
fun to see. You'd love to see a center back who scored on 4 set pieces in his last 5 games or whatever the number is right now. It's beginning to be a huge story. So, but yeah, beyond that, I think that really covers American soccer. MLS has not been as much fun to watch the last few days with all the U20s gone. So not really a whole lot to report from the domestic game right now, although Ellie and I have been watching a lot of it on the Discord. If anyone wants to join in, we'll hop on and just sort of do wraparound coverage as we watch different matches, just chatting. So anyone is welcome to join in and watch with us and hang out and do some MLS watching.
The Discord link is in the description. It's called Discord. There are like almost 200 people at this point in the Discord. Like Tom said, when MLS is on, we're in the voice chat, or you guys are. I have people to join. And that supporters lounge only for Patreons and YouTube members is open. You get to talk to us all the time. You get the early access to the monthly roster polls, and Tom gives you the scientific breakdown of all the polls and all the trajectories of where all the players and coaches are going. So again, do check that out. Try and support us if you can. We would really, really appreciate it. Otherwise, let's sign off. Let's do some last words. Tom, what's your last word for the week?
Last word for this week is, summer's coming. Enjoy it. I know I'm really looking forward to a summer of soccer, but one last week to get through a really stressful time. So I'm looking forward to putting in some hard work this week and then enjoying a summer of just hanging out and watching soccer. So perfect. Qualifying exam is this week. It'll be really stressful, but it'll be over by Friday.
I feel like every week you are either completely chill, you got nothing going on, or you are at the precipice of some crazy final or crazy test.
That's
good luck on that.
Graduate school life right there.
There we go. All right, my last word is enjoy the soccer that you're watching. Enjoy life while you can. And otherwise, we appreciate you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on It's Called Soccer. Peace.
See you guys.